Hello everybody and welcome to the Simsport ACC Season 3 Round 4 in association and streamed by Simply Race. We're of course at Kyalami today and it's going to be a super exciting race because we've got 60 minutes worth of action-packed GT3 racing. And as you can see there on your screen, commentators today, my name is Jack Oliphant, a voice you probably haven't heard before, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to be an exciting race. Hopefully I've got Steve, founder of Simsport, with me as well. And Steve, how you doing?
I'm good, mate. I'm very well, thank you very much, and welcome to the comms box as lead commentator tonight. Really looking forward to working with you, and I think we'll have some very exciting racing tonight at Kyalami. I'm a little bit biased because it is one of my favourite tracks on ACC.
Yeah, and I'm glad it's one of your favourite tracks because it's not a track that I'm overly familiar with, but I'm glad to hear that you are as excited to see these guys racing, and I'm sure you'd have loved to be racing yourself. But I want to give a bit of a breakdown to what Simsport is. So do you want to sort of take us through quickly for anybody new out there we're going to go into this in a bit more detail, Steve, as we know, but just quickly what Simsport is about and sort of how it came about a little bit quickly.
Yeah, very briefly, I made the jump from console gaming to PC gaming in November of 2016 and didn't have a clue. So basically started a community on Facebook with a couple of other guys to learn things, and basically it's just grown from there. Obviously we've been going a few years now and we've got to this fantastic stage where we're now streaming live events, GT3, GT4 leagues, in association with Simply Race. They've all got commentary and everybody's absolutely welcome at whatever level they are to drive at. We abide by some rules, which, as you say, we're going to go into those and explain how they work with driver licenses and things. But yeah, it's a community for absolute novices to aliens, and you'll see we've got a mix of both on the track.
Brilliant. Well, it's great to hear that sort of a very inclusive league setup that you've got going on. Now, of course, this is round 4. We are at Kyalami, of course, but round 3 came and went. Misano last week obviously wasn't commentating. So, Steve, why don't you take us down and sort of give us a brief overview of what happened last week?
Yeah, last week Misano was, as guys that are watching us every week know, that we like to shake things up a little bit, and we don't just race the same format every single round. So, for example, tonight we're doing 60 minutes racing. Last week it was 2 30-minute sprint races, with race 1 Archie Clifford Roberts taking the honours, followed by Kev Critchley and then Chris Crossman in 3rd place. Race 2, pretty much the same. Archie Clifford Roberts, Kev Critchley and Chris Crossman. One point to note this evening though, Kevin Critchley is not racing. He's on marital duties, celebrating a wedding anniversary, I believe, so he's dropped us for his wife this evening.
Well, I can only be insulted. No, I'm joking. It's, of course, an understandable reason. And obviously, real life takes precedent over Simsport, for some people anyway. So you were mentioning that a couple of names at the top of your list there for the top sort of podium final finishers. What's the championship looking like? Because a few of those names come up towards the top of the championship as well, don't they?
They do indeed, and it's his status quo. We have Archie Clifford Roberts in 1st place with 200 points, Kev Critchley with 146, and Chris Crossman 146. So those guys are tied, although Mr. Critchley has dropped a couple of rounds. We've got Stephen Haley in 4th place, and you know, it's all fairly close. He's on 143. So there's a good battle going on. We'll probably touch on this a bit later on. We'll go through the full sort of top 20 standings once we get into the stream a little bit, I believe.
Absolutely, yeah. Those top 5, especially. I mean, we know that Critchley is not necessarily racing today, but those sort of top 5 are the drivers that we're expecting to see sort of at the top end of the qualifying session, which we're going to get to. I think the qualifying session starts in a couple of minutes, and then the race will start around about the 25 to 8 mark, won't it? But we're expecting to see those guys right at the top. This is going to be a pretty full grid that we've got coming up here.
Yeah, the grid size should be, I would say, and I'd like to think, imagine about 25 cars to 36. It just depends. We've got a couple of drivers that have dropped out just for 1 week, you know, and they'll be back at the next round. As you say, family life takes precedent over sim racing, so drivers come and go for a little bit, and that's why we operate a dropped round in our championships, so that, you know, by spending a bit of family time, they're not getting penalised in the sim world.
Absolutely, yeah, because there's no AM or pro-am or any of that nonsense, is there? It's just, but they do offer a bit of forgiveness, don't you, with a drop round. So anybody can sort of, well, if they have a family commitment, like today, for instance, if someone wasn't racing, that means that come the end of the championship, that driver would be able to drop that round and be able to sort of make up some of the points that they may have lost compared to others. One person who's already taken his drop round, however, you were saying, is Critchley. So he's on marital duty today, but he's already dropped a round earlier on. Is that correct?
Yeah, he dropped the first round. He wasn't able to attend there, so I mean that's makes his points tally of 146 even more impressive, to be honest. But obviously he's going to drop down the order a little bit after this evening's race, I would imagine, because as any sort of racing as we see in the Formula One, the touring cars, whatever you're watching, you have got your top drivers that will be battling for the lead, and mistakes and mechanical issues aside, you'll get a similar look to the top 10 all the time. With a few of the new guys, it was impressive to say last week at Misano, they're getting to terms with it. The reason we don't run Pro and Am is because we've got a lot of new guys joining us. So there we're looking at the championship teams, as it were, just 16th place we've got Fordzilla, 17th Rollover Squadra-Course, 18 Car Guy Racing, the Ferraris with 23 points, Simsport Racing in 20th, Dynamic Motorsport 21st, Jaguar Racing, those guys are getting it together in 22nd. They had a good result last week at Misano in the 2 races, fought very hard. Optimum Motorsport in 23rd, and Diverse Rides in 24th. And the list goes on. But yes, there's some really competitive racing, and there's a lot of guys that are new to ACC, and that's the reason we don't run the Pro-Am, because our grid size doubled for this championship, so we figured it was better just to run the guys all on a level playing field, let them sort themselves out, and then potentially the subsequent leagues that we run will probably run a Pro-Am series.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's a good idea, especially as you're sort of testing the water with what is a relatively new league, of course, and everything like that. And of course, we do have a team championship. It's something that I actually didn't take note of coming into here because, as you know, Steve, I was a bit of a last-minute addition. But apologies about any of the teams that didn't get their order read out. We'll try and make sure that you get a mention, especially the top guys that we didn't really get a chance to shout out. We'll make sure that you get a mention in the middle of the race, and obviously we'll try and figure out how the points may be divvied up come qualifying checkered flag. We've, of course, got 15 minutes on the qualifying as it happens at the moment. And, Haley in 4th place, we're looking at Izailovic. He's down in 17th place. But you can see the amount of cars that are out on track at the moment, and they're sort of doing quite a good job here of filling the track up. It's just whether or not they'll be able to get the gap to be able to put their flying laps in.
Absolutely, and the Simsport rules are that basically, like real world, when it comes to qualifying, you've got to find your own space. If you're too close to the car in front and he's on a flying lap, that's tough luck. You should have given yourself more space. If he's not on a hot lap, then he will be getting blue flags and he should get out of your way. So it's quite difficult when you've got full grids of cars to find that space on some tracks. Easier on some than others. Kyalami shouldn't be too bad. The guys are used to it now, so they all usually manage to get a decent lap in.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And as we've got about 13 minutes or so left of qualifying, obviously we'll sort of chip in at the end to see what the results looking like. Clifford Roberts, who's obviously championship leader at the moment, doing an absolute flying lap, 139.9. Crossman, he's 3rd in the championship. He's in 2nd place. And obviously it goes down a little bit from there, but we'll bring you back in, Steve, because I want to hear about how you sort of set up Simsport Racing and how on earth it developed into what it is today. Because you mentioned that you went from console gaming to PC gaming about 2016, but sort of why was that decision?
It was just it's natural progression, really, because obviously with the powers of the internet and everything, you see what everybody else is doing, and you're on the console racing, and you sort of get involved in that, and you start spending more money. That my steering wheel cost me more money than the console cost me, and it's like, well, okay, am I really doing this justice racing on a console now? And that's not to say the consoles aren't good, but you get a lot more out of it with PC racing, because then in the old days when we were racing AC, we had all the mods and everything, but then along with that comes the knowledge, which coming from the consoles, we didn't have the knowledge of how to even install mods and do simple things like that. So we started a community, and the community grew and grew, and we got some very talented gents involved who knew a lot more than we did, and they taught us, and they've stuck with us. There's quite a few members within Simsport that have been here since the beginning, and they're racing this evening. And it's credit to a lot of those guys. It really is a team effort, and it's just grown and grown and grown. And we said at the beginning of this year we'd run quite a few successful leagues in AC. We'd done 2 previous leagues in ACC. and we wanted to take it the step further and start broadcasting and commentating, and this is where we are. And thank you very much for stepping in, as you said, at such short notice today. Alex announced last week that he couldn't join us this week. He's away on other duties, and we did have somebody else lined up who unfortunately is poorly. So yeah, you've really come in at the last minute, and we do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Well, you're making me blush, Steve, but honestly, I think you've got all the information that's probably more interesting to the people at home, and when the racing starts, I'll start shouting at my monitor and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, it's going to be good fun tonight. I think 60 minutes, and I sort of want to press on the fact that, you know, you guys have set yourselves up, Simsport Racing, as a sort of, it's not hardcore, is it? You guys wanted to educate yourselves, some other people around you, find some nice people to help you with mods and everything. Because I know from a personal perspective, when I started jumping onto the PC for sim racing, I found it extremely difficult to sort of like start installing mods and doing a set of courses and stuff like that. You know, I wanted to drive my real life race car, but it wasn't there, but it was a mod. So I was like, how do I install this? And it would have been great to have a community like Simsport to be able to jump on with and just like hit someone up with a message and be like, you know, can you help me out with this? And they'd be straight on to you. So if anybody's out there sort of wondering, oh God, I don't really know how to approach a set of course competizione or a set of course itself and want some more information, then by all means, anybody at Simsport Racing, just apply to be on their Facebook page. I'm sure Steve, you'll back me up in saying they'll be happy to help you out.
Absolutely. Yeah, as I said earlier, we really are open to people. Even if you don't want to race and you're just hot lapping yourself and you maybe don't want to join the league just yet, look us up on the website. www.simsport-racing.com, and you'll have all the links for Discord and Facebook and every piece of information you need. And we're obviously a very friendly community and we'll help you the best we can. Just jump on and have a chat.
Fantastic to hear. And I've just had a little note in my ear from our broadcaster, Mike, that we're going to be able to jump on with a flying lap of Kyalami. So I think you guys can be able to bring that up soon. You'll enjoy a flying lap, and Steve might be able to talk it through. But yeah, I look forward to having a watch of that before we jump into the end of qualifying.
2.85 miles here at Kyalami in South Africa as we head towards the kink for the first time, approaching it around about 135 and 4th, and before we break at nearly 150 miles an hour from 125 metres out in 5th, all the way down to 2nd through Crowthorne at just over 50 miles an hour. Then through the Jux K sweep in 3rd gear at around 90 miles an hour before going up to Barbecue, dropping from 100 miles an hour in 3rd down to 75 miles an hour as you exit out of the corner. Take as much curb as you dare as you now are on the run towards Sunset. So you can head about 4th at about 130 going through the corner, drop the throttle a little bit, put on the brakes, go through at 110 before you approach onto Clubhouse Bend, and you're going to brake from around 120 in 4th down to 2nd at 65 through Clubhouse Bend. Before now it's up to the S's. Both corners will be taken at 3rd gear, first through at 95 miles an hour before reaching nearly 100 on the apex of the second part of the S's before you head to Leeuwkop at the far part of the circuit. Braking for around 125 in 4th, down to 50 miles an hour, slowest part on the circuit in 2nd gear, before the drop down through Mineshaft, quite appropriately called there, as we head towards the Crocodiles as one of the most fastest parts of the circuit. You're going to go through this sweeping left around 140 miles an hour in 5th gear, before braking 110 metres out at 5th, 142 miles an hour, all the way down the gearbox down to 2nd through the Crocodiles at 55 miles per hour. Just 2 more corners to go here as we head through right through Cheetah, 3rd gear, 90 miles an hour before you head to Ingwe, which will take us onto the main start finish straight. Down to 2nd, 50 miles an hour on the speedometer, and you power out of the corner run as wide as you dare through the final turn and across the line in a 141.89.
Well, I hope everybody enjoyed that flying lap around Kyalami, and thank you very much to Alex for doing the voiceover. I actually started trying to do a voiceover and then got told that I didn't need to do it, so that was a relief, because I'm sure Alex did a fantastic job for everybody watching at home. We are, of course, into the last 7.5 minutes of qualifying. That means that we can actually start really looking at sort of who's going to be putting in a real contention for that pole position, and Clifford Roberts. He's not really ran away with it. Crossman is only 2.5 tenths behind him, but he's currently on provisional pole position with a 139.771. Crossman, who is in fact on board now, just following the Ferrari and following the Audi, in the Porsche, just 0.279 seconds away. So only 2-3 tenths maybe behind, and Haley's even closer behind Crossman. So he's only 3 tenths behind as well. And Steve, well, you can see him parking up. It's really interesting to see, because I come from an iRacing broadcasting background, that these cars are all very well matched in the Assetto Corsa.
They are. They all have their own different characteristics. As we see, Archie's just done a 39 point, just a shade under 6 there, and that is somewhere closer to his best time. I was speaking to him before we came online, and Archie was telling me he's done a 39.4. Mr. Crossman's best lap in practice was 39.7, and Mr. Haley was around about a 140.2. So Steve Haley is about on his limit, but Archie's maybe got a couple more tenths to come. But yeah, the cars are fairly well bopped, and they all have different characteristics. So some of them, you know, they will have a bit more top speed than others, and this is a bit of a Porsche track, is Kyalami, I believe, because it really does jump out the corners very well, does the Porsche, although it lacks a little bit on the top speed. You'll do very well to be able to slipstream someone down the start finish straight, but if you can get in front, usually you can stay in front.
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, I come from an iRacing background, and on iRacing, there's sort of a bit of what's called a meta car, and that's quite often the Audi R8, but it's so tricky to drive that it ends up, a few people decide to have the Mercedes, but you just can't get close to the time. It's great to see that these sort of the Ferrari, the Audi, I mean, you see a lot of Audis, to be fair, in that top 10, but the Ferraris, the Porsches, the McLarens as well are there or thereabouts, so we should get a good spectrum of the grid. And in fact, you can see here with Horst, a red Mercedes, which is looking very nice, and a yellow Ferrari just up ahead of him as well. And I believe I saw a Jaguar as well flying about. I think Parkett in 23rd is representing the Jaguar as well. So, yeah, no, we had a couple more housekeeping things to get through, didn't we, Steve? In terms of before we just get to the final couple of laps, penalties. What's the crack with them at the moment?
Yeah, the Simsport system, we operate a race license penalty system, and there's one driver that's actually joined us this evening who is on a suspended race ban. Now, basically, we issue penalties, 2 points onto your race license for any incident you're involved in that is deemed to be your fault, and it's 2 points per car that is involved in that incident. Now, unfortunately, Adam Vailovic, if I just make a real mess of pronouncing his name, suffered an incident in the first lap of race 2, I believe it was in Misano, and he took out around about 8 cars were involved, so that gave him 16 points straight away. Now, what we said, because it was a little bit unlucky and it's a steward's decision, it didn't warrant giving him a ban. It was unfair. It was apologetic. He's normally a very clean driver, so we have put him on a 2-race suspended ban, so he's got to keep his nose clean for 2 races. Any incident that is his fault, he will serve a ban. So we run a full stewarding system where the guys are allowed to submit incident reports, and we will review them, and we will issue penalties accordingly.
Yeah, and it was sort of a blanket Simsport Racing license, wasn't it? So even if you have all those incidents in GT3, they can cross over to the GT4s, can't they? Just very quickly before we go to the
very quickly, yes. Basically, Adam will be racing under the same, when he joins us in the GT4s, which he did on Wednesday evening. He was racing effectively with 8 points on his license, so if he gets involved in another incident, it's 2 points straight away, and he will serve that race ban.
Yeah, very good. So you can see by the timing screens on your left-hand side, obviously we're on board with the Newterling's Bentley, driving the Bentley, sorry, here at the moment. He's about 2.5 seconds off the pole position time, but that doesn't mean anything, because realistically all these guys just want to have a fantastic, clean and great battle, and you can see the difference between the likes of Wolf in 16th position all the way down to about Diaz in 21st. There's only about 2 to 4 tenths in it, so it's going to be really close in that mid-pack. And even if you see Izailovic all the way up to Pride in 11th place, so that is 15th to 11th, they're incredibly close as well, only about a tenth between them. So we've got some fantastic battles here that, regardless of whether it's for the race lead or 10th position, 15th position, 17th position, we're going to have 60 minutes of what will probably be very similar to sprint racing.
Absolutely, and just another point to note, we've got Mr. Christopher Pinchbeck in car 43 with his teammate, I believe, who's not on the grid potentially at the minute, Mr. Hinden, car 40. They were racing for Aston Martin in the previous events, but they've both decided they wish to switch allegiance to the Audi Evo. They do that freely at their choice, but they do lose 50 championship points for swapping car as a penalty halfway through a season.
Yeah, excellent.
So yeah, they've gone to a car that they believe is more suited to them, and yes, Chris is doing pretty well there to be in 8th place at the moment.
It must be working for him because, as you said, he's doing a pretty good job. He's currently in the pit lane, as is our provisional pole man, Clifford Roberts. He clearly doesn't think he needs to go any faster, or he doesn't think he can go that much faster on a flying lap. He's on pole position. I mean, we heard from Steve before saying that he's probably got a 10th or 2 in him to try and get that ultimate lap time out of it, but he's about 4/10, nearly half a second up the road from Crossman, who doesn't really feel like he probably has that time in him, maybe, and talking to each other beforehand. But Haley is really not far behind Crossman, so these guys are still out on track. That's incredibly close to get onto the front row between those two, who are, of course, probably championship rivals, realistically. Having said Critchley is obviously not here and already taken a drop round. Crossman and Haley are the next 2 behind them, so 3rd and 4th in the championships, currently 2nd and 3rd at the moment in qualifying, and that is very close for those guys indeed. And of course, in the championship, there's only 3 points between them, so whoever we see win out of this race between those two are probably going to come out in 2nd place in the championship, so that's going to be a very interesting indeed.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you say that, Aaron Walker, who is in 8th place in the championship, just slots it into 2nd place on the grid there. So that's a stonking time for Aaron. And then just to mention, he is Steve Haley's teammate, so that's a good team battle up there. Teammate driver battle up at the front. But the guys really can't afford to let Archie go off into the sunset, so to speak, at Kyalami tonight. They really need to keep him honest and put him under some pressure and take the race win from him, because he is increasing that gap, as we said in the league table. You know, he's if I just have a quick look now, he's on the 200 points, and if you discount Kev Critchley, who's not here tonight, Chris Crossman is on 146, Steve Haley 143. So they are starting to lose touch with him a little bit, and they really do need to keep hold of him tonight and keep him honest, and potentially, you know, they need to beat him. I know that's an obvious thing to say, but once you watch the racing, you'll realise how difficult that can be.
Well, the checkered flag has come out for qualifying, so everybody who's on their current lap will be able to finish it, to be able to try and put their last flying times in. And you're on board with Crossman now as he tries to inch out that extra 0.02 seconds. He tries to go around the last corner. We'll see if he's able to improve that at all. It's going to be very tough for him. He goes across the line at 39.8, and indeed he does. So Crossman does move up into that 2nd position. And I tell you what, Steve, he's narrowed that gap to Clifford Roberts. You were saying about somebody needs to take the fight to him. Well, Crossman could be the man.
Crossman is the man, and that Porsche is the car at Kyalami. If he can get into the first corner in the lead, and I believe on the grid layout he will have the inside line, I think. I'm going to probably shoot myself in the foot there, but I'm pretty sure he does have the inside line. So if he can get the car into that first corner on the inside, he's got half a chance for sure, because the Porsche is a very difficult car to overtake around here.
Well, we'll have a chat all about the tactics and everything once qualifying's come to a close before the race, probably on the warm-up lap for the race, because obviously you were saying that these cars have to go on a full warm-up lap, and then it's a rolling start, rolling start. It's the same sort of thing, I suppose. Depends how aggressive you are. But we'll have a chat about what the tactics that these guys might employ on that sort of rolling start. So as we come to a close, I think you'll see that Clifford Roberts has taken that pole position, and that wasn't really unexpected, was it, Steve?
No, not at all. I was talking to the guys in the practice server just before we went on live, and I was asking them the times, and been watching Archie through the week. We've been looking at the times on the servers, as these lads do put some serious hours in practicing every night, so we always knew it was going to be difficult.
Yeah, absolutely, and I'm very much looking forward to the 60-minute race indeed. And well, it's going to be one of those races that's difficult to decide what kind of tactics you want to push out there, isn't it? Whether you want to do almost like treat it like a sprint race, but obviously split in the middle with a pit stop, whether you sort of treat it like a GT and try and collect as many points as you can, maybe wait for somebody to crash out. But it's a dangerous tactic, that is, isn't it? Because 60 minutes sort of goes quicker than you might think.
Oh yeah, for sure. And with the pit window being open for the full 60 minutes, compulsory to take a set of tyres, but no refueling allowed. So the cars will be heavy from the start. They will have fuel. They have to put enough fuel in to finish the race. The only tactic is, when do you pit? So if you're stuck behind someone, do you try and undercut them, or do you stay out a little bit longer and try and put some fast laps in, so that when you do come into pit, you come back out? It's one of those. Yeah,
it's very difficult to sort of break that down, but obviously it's quite important as well with the fuel that you have to put on board. I believe you run an open setup system, so anybody can sort of decide on what they want to put on their car in terms of setup and fuel and everything like that, but they're not allowed to put fuel in their car in the pit stop. Is that correct?
That is correct. On the multifunction display, when they're selecting all their tyre pressures and whether to repair any damage they've got, and the other things they've got to choose from, the fuel option is greyed out, so they will not be able to add fuel. So if the guy's short fuel, they won't finish the race unless they change their ECU. They have got the ability to change the map on the ECUs to go into fuel saving mode, but obviously at the expense of performance.
Yeah, so for instance, a driver could underfuel their car by a lap, try and get that sort of lightweight approach for the first 75% of the race, but then have to whack the ECU all the way down to try and finish the race. And obviously that's a very dangerous tactic if you don't quite get that gap.
Absolutely it is, yeah, and we've all learnt from experience that it's not always the best thing to do.
No, it sounds a very risky idea to me personally. I was just thinking about the other sort of races that you guys run. You've mentioned the GT4 league, or I mentioned it, or you mentioned it. Can you sort of give an explanation about what the other races that you run throughout the week, just in case someone's watching and fancies getting involved?
Yeah, Wednesday evenings we've just started. The first round was last Wednesday, just gone at Brands Hatch. 45-minute race in the brand new GT4s on ACC, which are absolutely awesome cars. And there was, I think there was approximately 24 guys on the grid for that. Absolute door handle racing, really close. Midfield battles were within a tenth of a second for multiple laps. It was absolutely awesome to watch, and that is on our YouTube channel. If you want to look at our past videos, you can watch that full stream as it was streamed live with commentary, and it is a really great watch if you want to see how the GT4 cars go and how Simsport puts on an event. That's a good one to watch.
Well, I think that's thoroughly recommended for anybody, and as I said, I was a bit new to today, but if I get the chance, I will definitely be tuning in on Wednesday night to watch that as well, because as since lockdown, I've gotten really into the esport world, as I'm sure a lot of people have, since the fact that real life racing sort of taken a back seat. It is, of course, back, however, real life racing. So we'll just take a quick minute, because we can't do a motorsport, even an esport motorsport event, without realising and mentioning the fact that obviously the F1's back, British touring cars are back, the British GT was on today. It's great to see all this sort of real life racing and esports sort of coming together and sort of really getting each other up the order, I suppose, giving everyone more options to watch some great racing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant to see it all back on TV, and I was guilty of watching the Formula 1 all afternoon, and I will be watching the GT racing on YouTube later this evening. But if I can just take you back to the GT4s and put you on the spot, I hear you're quite handy in a Ginetta yourself. Maybe you need to get on the grid with our boys and show them how to go on.
Well, I'd like to say that I would love to, but I was saying to you, Steve, before, Andy, you put me on the spot and you're laughing because you know full well that I said that I was awful at sim racing. I will see what I can do and whether I can get a bit of time off on Wednesday nights and join you for a race or two, especially if it's a track that I know. I don't know Kyalami, so I won't be joining you for that one, but if you go to Silverstone or something, I'll try and get the time to come down and shake myself off in the Ginetta GT4.
All abilities are welcome, as we said, mate, and you never know, it may improve your real will skills.
Well, that could probably do with help as well, so if that's the way we're going to do it, then or that's the way I can sell it, sorry, then I'll definitely be turning up, don't you worry about a thing. What do you expect from this race then? We said that they have to really take the fight to Clifford Roberts. Do you expect that? Oh, in fact, we're on the grid now.
Yeah, we're on the grid. We got a few minutes to go before they make their way off the grid, obviously, and the guys are just setting off now on the warm-up lap, I believe. But yeah, I've said it already. They need to tag Archie. They need to keep hold of him and potentially beat him into that first corner, because if he gets away, Archie is the type of driver that does just put his head down. He'll put in the laps, lap after lap, and it will be very difficult to close any gap up on him unless he has some sort of issue with back markers or with tyre wear or anything like that, or makes a mistake, but he doesn't usually. He's not a driver prone to mistakes. Mr. Crossman, Mr. Haley, they're all the same. They'll all battle hard and they'll all drive as hard as they can. But honestly, if Archie gets away, I see him making a gap.
Well, that's interesting as well, because we were talking about the tactics in terms of pit stops and setups and everything like that. But in GT racing, if a driver sort of is on pole position and you're on second, you might just think, we'll tuck up behind, we'll see if he makes a mistake, try and get him on the pit stops, or try and take home some points. As you said, Archie seems to be one of those drivers that can just get their head down and put qualifying laps in for 2 hours straight. They really need to take a sprint racing approach then to try and maybe lunge him into the first corner, or just at least get him on the first lap at some point.
Yeah, they really need to push hard for that first lap or two. But obviously tonight, a 60-minute race, but effectively it's split into 2 30-minute sprint races, because obviously the quickest option is to swap tyres at the 30-minute mark, and the last 30 minutes you're going to do on new tyres with a lighter fuel load, so that the lap times are just going to keep coming down during the race. But they need to keep in touch with him, otherwise he's gone.
Absolutely, and you can see on our setup at the moment, the live stream, that you can obviously cover the back end of the grid in your top left, and the bottom right, you can sort of see the front end of the grid. And now this is something that I am very new to as a broadcaster, but it's something that is extremely cool, and I think you should, everybody watching it definitely will appreciate the fact that they can watch some of their favourite drivers all up and down the grid, and that gives us a great opportunity to see some fantastic racing, doesn't it? Because as I was saying before, Steve, it's not just the front of the grid that provides amazing overtakes or great racing, door-to-door action, it's the back as well, or even that midfield.
I was just going to say, I mean, it makes it harder work for us because we've got to multitask. I don't often watch 2 TV screens at once, but yeah, it is great to watch. It's fantastic. It brings something extra to the stream, and we can get shouted at by anybody watching on any of our platforms that we're streaming to say, look at that, we're missing something or whatever. And just a quick hello to everybody who is. I know we've got quite a few viewers on the YouTube stream at the moment. Welcome, and I hope you're going to enjoy a fantastic race tonight. But yeah, the midfield drivers, they're every bit as tenacious as the front lads, and there'll be some really close battles all the way down. There's quite a few names of notoriety in there that have been with us for a long time. They know the form, and they know how to race close, and they know how to race hard.
Cool, so we're about to start racing as well, as the drivers all form up 2 by 2 on their rolling start. Crossman is on the inside, and as they come round the final corner, you can see him try and gun away, but actually Clifford Roberts has got the jump on him a little bit there. Crossman isn't really getting dropped as they start to just inch their way further forward, and I think we are away, and you can see Clifford Roberts. We are green, and Clifford Roberts actually got a fantastic start. Crossman's been caught out slightly. He's been now caught in the middle of the order, and there's a bit of contact there as well. So Walker, I think that was, he got a bit of contact with, and he's fallen down the order quite substantially. Clifford Roberts has got away, but he's got an Audi just up the back end of him, so he might be able to put him under a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, that was Hedges actually that contacted with Mr. Crossman, and it's the 2 teammates, Walker and Haley, that have got the jump on Crossman and Hedges, and yeah, they just need to try and cling onto the back of Archie. As you can see, he's already pulling a little bit of a gap there, which is not good to see.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm getting a few people mixed up. It's the fact that I don't know the liveries too well, and hopefully, Steve, you'll be able to correct me at any point we see. But it was an entertaining first corner, and we see he's now under pressure even more from Diop. Will he be able to get his nose ahead and carry on as we go down the sort of S's section?
It looks like Diop's got a drive-through as well, unfortunately. That would be for a start line infringement at this stage in the race. So yeah, he's going to have to serve a drive-through penalty, which is really unfortunate for Abdoulaye. He's one of our real-world racers. He races GT4s, and he's going to have to come through the pits. So that's going to, at this early stage in the race, when they're all packed together, that's going to drop him right down the order.
One thing that is unfortunate for everybody else, but not so unfortunate for Clifford Roberts, is the fact that they haven't been able to make that lunge on him. As you see a couple of cars going side by side, the sky-liveried Ferrari of Hartnell trying to get up the inside of Crossman as well. So Crossman just seems to be falling down the order. He's had a bit of a shaky start to the race.
Yeah, as we said earlier, these cars do have different characteristics, and some of the cars do take a couple of laps to actually get going.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I'm getting this slightly wrong with the UI of the Assetto Corsa, but I don't think that was Crossman I was talking about, actually. It's the Ferrari of Hartnell on the Audi of Diop, so I got that slightly wrong, sorry, but they're now on board with the Porsche of Crossman. Here is Diop. He was getting pushed along by Hartnell. As you say, Diop actually got the drive-through penalty, and he's been put on the grass now. As you see the Ferrari of Hartnell pushing his way through, but he's not been able to quite manage to make that move stick. And he's going to have to be careful because he's got Pinchbeck up behind him as well in the Audi, so he's going to have to be really careful about leaving the door open, so he might make a move through.
Well, we've got a great group there. We've got Pinchbeck, we've got Mitchell half a second back, and Pilkington 2/10 back from that. So we've got a fantastic group there, all looking to pounce if anyone makes a mistake or opens the door.
Speaking of making a mistake and open the door, Diop's gone further back, and we're going to be able to cut to a replay of the first lap, I believe. This might be going into the first corner. You see a bit of a punch there between Crossman and, I think you said that was Walker, who's in second place. Hedges, sorry. And
yes.
Clifford Roberts has pulled away a 1.3.5 second gap away from Walker, so he's actually checked out, and that's probably going to be a theme we're going to see, whether or not anybody can really take the fight to Clifford Roberts will probably be down to pitch strategy.
It will, and it's we've got teammates in second and third with Walker and Haley now, so we'll just have to see what those guys decide to do. If Haley's any quicker, maybe Walker will let him through and try and chase Archie down, but it's going to be a tall order even at this early stage in the race. But we're going to have a great battle, I believe, between Walker, Haley, Hedges, Crossman once he gets that Porsche warmed up, Hartnell, Pinchbeck, Diop, Pilkington, Mitchell in 10th, so all the way down to 10th place, and let's not discount any of the other guys, but yeah, all the way up to 10th, they're all pretty tight.
Well, we mentioned that Walker and Haley are obviously teammates, but Haley's obviously a bit higher up in the Drivers' Championship at the moment. I know we're only in round 4 out of, I think, 10. But, yeah, that might play a bit of a part in terms of what they sort of do team orders-wise. And as you say, Haley might just be that little bit quicker. He seems to be only a couple of tenths, if not 1/10 behind Walker, going through that last speed trap. So it's whether or not they decide to move those guys up. In fact, no, it's 1.2 seconds. My bad. Again, I'm getting the UI a bit mixed up here on a set quarter. But yeah, 1.2 seconds behind is Haley. It's whether or not he can pull that gap a little bit closer to Walker.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, they won't give up. They'll keep trying. We're on board with Crossman now, and it looks like he's got that Porsche working now. It's he's starting to put some pressure on Hedges, and he'll keep him honest as they go up to turn 10. Le Coupe, I think it is. I said I wouldn't try and pronounce it, but I have. So if I've made a mess of it, please make a comment.
Well, I would probably decide to pronounce it exactly the same way, although I probably would have just wimped out and called it turn 10, so good on you for even trying. Yeah, they're going down, I believe, mineshaft now into the Crocodile. So a few of these corners are a bit more easy to pronounce. You'll probably hear us call them out a bit more often than some of the others. But Crossman seems... Well, I mean, you're a bit better at a set of Corsa Competizione than me, Steve. Does that mean that Crossman just didn't really get his car up to the right temperature during the warm-up lap? Did the other guys just do that, or is that a tendency with the Porsche?
It's a tendency with the Porsche. The Porsche is my car of choice when I race in ACC, and it's a fantastic car, but I think it's a combination of the driver and the car, and it can take 2 or 3 laps just to get into the groove and get going. Whereas some of the other cars, you can get them off the line and away straight away. But let's say Crossman's up to speed now, and I expect to see a close battle there with Hedges, who is also a quick driver, obviously up in 4th place. He won't be an easy overtake, won't Dave? He had a fantastic race midweek in the GT4s, and I said earlier, if you get a chance to watch that, it's worth watching just Dave's battle as we cut to another replay.
Yeah, and we see one of the McLarens sort of dicing it out with the Aston Martin, and you can see him just getting a little bit of a tag there, or just hooking the curb and getting a bit sideways. Not ideal for him in the slightest, but now we can see Hedges. He's got Crossman right behind him. It's whether or not he'll be able to keep this off. Steve, you were saying in the build-up that it's quite a hard circuit to overtake round, and that's probably what we're going to see now, because Crossman's only half a second behind, but he's not really ever able to make that lunge.
He's not, and unfortunately, the strongest part of the track for the Porsche is the part we're coming through now. From turn 3, 4, 5, you can build up in the Porsche. You can close the gap up right through the S's up to turn 10, and then at this point now, where they're coming down through the Crocodiles and to Chi to turn 15 before they go to the turn 16 start-finish, the Audi will start to just pull away again. Then the start-finish straight, he has the legs on the Porsche. You do well in the Porsche just to stay in the slipstream, just so you can stay on the back of the car.
It's very interesting to hear the sort of like the differences as we cut to another replay, and this is one of the Nissan GTRs, and there seems to be a bit of a stuck there McLaren getting into the back of him and just pushing him. It's don't think any harm done, but the obviously not really making friends over in the mid back there.
No, and these guys seem to like to give the stewards something to do after the race, so the incidents will get looked at, whether they're reported or not. The stewards do actually watch the replay files to see if they can pick up on any unreported incidents as well as reported, and drivers will receive warnings if they're being a little bit over aggressive, shall we say.
Well, we are about 7.5 minutes into this race, 4 laps down, and we'll give you a bit of a rundown of the top 10. Clifford Roberts was on pole, and he's stayed there from the lights out and the rolling start up to now. Clifford Roberts stayed in pole with a 2.8 second gap back to Walker, who's made a fantastic start on the first lap. Haley's in 3rd place, teammates of Walker, and Hedges is in 4th, so Audi top 4 at the moment. Crossman unfortunately fell down the order as he took a little bit longer to try and get his Porsche up to temperature. He seems to be up to speed now, but he's struggling to get past Hedges in the Audi. Hartnell is in 6th, Pinchbeck is in 7th, Martin Pilkington down in 8th position, and Mitchell in the leading Mercedes, you could argue, is in 9th, and in the leading Nissan is Ack in 10th position. So these guys, they haven't quite pulled away a massive gap, and especially this midfield battle seems to be very, very tight, Steve. This is probably going to be what we're going to see for the next 51 minutes.
Yeah, Dean Riley there in 11th, a new member to Simsport, joined us for this league, and he's improving. He wasn't a slow driver. He's a good midfield driver, but he's getting quicker because he's now getting to the sharper end of what we would call the midfield. And Cody Pride in 12th, he's brand new. He joined us for the GT4s on Wednesday, so this is his first race in the GT3s, and it's Cody that we saw just nerfing the back of the Nissan in that previous replay. So hopefully the adrenaline's not taking over too much, and he won't get too much of a warning at the end of the race for any aggressive moves, but it's good to see he's racing hard.
Well, he might have a bit of a problem with maybe not quite knowing how punchy these cars out are on the corner, if he's obviously used to GT4 cars, but that might be making a bit of an easy excuse for him on that one with the stewards. I'm sure we'll be able to have a quick look at the replay, but by the looks of it, there was not much harm done. As you can see, the Nissan of Ack is actually pulled away a little bit, and he's actually overtaken Riley as well. So good racing in this midfield battle. As you can see, a little bit of a drift there. And
he's lost it. That's Cody. Yep, Cody's lost it. As you said there, he was just starting to drift as he turned into Sunset, and that is a really difficult corner. You've got to go into it with some commitment, but you've got to be inch perfect, because you're looking to get on the power just before the apex there to keep the car tucked in and to get it into the right line to go into clubhouse. But he just got the back end stepping out, and that was a simple mistake to make. He didn't get any assistance on that. That was all Cody.
Well, a person who hasn't made any mistakes since the opening lap is Crossman, because he's trying to put a massive amount of pressure on Hedges. He's obviously the quicker driver out of the two. It's just whether or not he'll be able to make the moves stick. You can see him all trying to go around the outside of Hedges. As Steve was saying before, it is easy to defend, or not easy to defend, but hard to overtake is probably the better way round of saying it. But Hedges seems to have that Audi hooked up and is able to hit his braking points and just put his car right where Crossman isn't really able to make a move. And as Steve was saying, again, we're going down through the kink now into Crowthorne, which I believe is probably the official first corner. And he's not really able to get the legs on the Audi to make that move into that corner.
No, as I said, you saw a prime example there. The Porsche was perfect in the slipstream. He got the perfect exit out of the final corner, turn 16, but the Audi just had the legs on him. Even though the Porsche was in the slipstream, he couldn't do it. But Chris is really tagging on now, and he's in the strong section of the track for the Porsche now, and he's really going to put the pressure on. It's just forcing the opportunity, because it won't just present itself easily now. We will have to really put Dave under pressure, and Dave knows how to absorb pressure. He's a seasoned racer, is Dave.
You can see the Porsche smelling the back end of that Audi as he tries to push through the sort of quick section for the Porsche, as Steve was saying, and he's just not able to really make that move. It's not really wide enough. The cars are all on full commitment into the corner. They're all loading up. You see the Porsche really closing into the back there. These cars are really loading up the front end of their cars, trying to get the power down as quickly as possible. You can just see Hedges. He checked him up on the apex a little bit just there, and he's able to pull away into this final section of the lap where the Porsche is strong, but not really strong enough to throw it around the outside. As he said, it's a 60-minute race. You don't want to be throwing it away in the first 12 minutes, but that's how long it's gone, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely, and the lap times are sort of relating that. I believe Dave Hedges' fastest lap at the moment are 1:41.4, and Mr. Crossman's is 1:41.3. So lap times they're matched really, and it's going to come down. I believe this one might come down to either Dave making a mistake, or it's going to be a pit stop strategy where maybe there's an undercut to be had, or maybe stay out a little bit longer and do, like I say, get your foot down and try and build a gap while the other guy's having a pit stop. Well,
at the risk of sounding blatantly obvious, these guys are obviously not part of the same team, but part of the same team is Walker and Haley, the two Audis in second and third. Haley's managed to just bring that gap down ever so slightly to around about 8 tenths over the start-finish line. And, 6 tenths now as they come across Sector 1. And we were talking before about whether or not team orders will take part. There's a 2.8 second gap between Haley and Hedges. So it's probably around about now that they might be thinking, okay, how do we play this for the most amount of points possible, the best situation for both of us? Because they can't let each other pass if it means slowing up so much that they lose that third place as well.
Yeah, I think the best place to let anyone pass down this track is going to be down the start-finish straight and just ease it off into the braking zone. But, looking at the times, looking at the gap, is there going to be any advantage unless Mr. Walker is really holding up Steve Haley? But at the moment, that gap's coming down, but it's literally a tenth or so every lap. It's not crashing down. It's not like he's really holding Steve up at the moment. So they're also going to be thinking about the Drivers' Championship themselves, as an individual.
Well, I think probably one thing that's for sure is that Clifford Roberts isn't going to be caught anytime soon because he's got a 4.471 second lap. As we see a Lexus flying off, and I think that was probably as a Mercedes. Well, he had plenty of time to see that. I'm not entirely sure how he didn't really, but there was a big coming together there, and unfortunately those guys have probably ended up in the pits.
Yeah, another replay.
Yeah,
that's coming round Clubhouse there. You sort of committed. I mean, I'll bring out your driver's book of excuses now. As you come round Clubhouse, obviously you're fully committed into the braking zone for Sunset, and you don't have a lot of time to swerve in avoidance because the car is still a little bit unsettled as you come out of there riding the curbs. But just an unfortunate incident. Nobody really to blame for that. It's just one of those things that someone's got collected.
Yeah, not ideal for them, but an ideal situation. However, saying that's not ideal for Haley as we shoot on board with him. That's a bit of a almost commentator's curse coming out there because Haley drops back away from his teammate Walker just as he was trying to get on the limit. He may have experienced a little bit of understeer there, and I think he just touched the outside and ended up locking up as we see one of the Mercedes going under the Jags, and the Jag just started losing it and ended up spearing really into the Mercedes, but Mercedes probably should have seen that the gap wasn't there.
Yeah, and again, into Sunset there, it's a difficult car because a corner for the cars to start making alterations to trajectory, as it were, because he's already lifted off and then the car's unsettled, so to any steering input at that point, and you risk doing exactly what they did.
Yeah, it's always important going through corners like that. You just keep a little bit on the throttle just to make sure that the rear end sticks to the floor, because as you see there, the Jaguar just ended up the back end just lifted and turned away from the driver, and it's almost nearly always impossible to try and get it back with the steering rack of these GT3s. It's just not enough to start Tokyo drifting, put it that way. So an unfortunate incident for those guys there, and they'll have to keep an eye out for that corner, especially as we shoot back towards Utley, trying to put the pressure on Ack.
Yeah, Gav is another one of the founder members of Simsport. Gavin Utley's been with us pretty much from day one, and he's chosen the Bentley Team M Sport to have a go in this series, and he's putting the pressure on Bliv AK. They'll be streaming this live, I believe, on Twitch, so that's another stream you can see. Both very good drivers, and Gav will certainly put that Nissan under pressure, and it's nice to see the Bentley doing the rounds here.
Yeah, he's actually, I'm just having a look down the order. He's he's gotten past actually, so it looks like Axe made a mistake, and they're going side by side. Will the Bentley have the legs? He's certainly got one of the highest motors, and in fact, there we go. The perspective looked like they were side by side, but the Bentley of Utley just managing to make his way through rather easily. I think that was Axe's mistake more than anything else.
It was. He went a little bit deep into turn 5 barbecue. He just managed to miss the apex completely, left the car's width, and Gav said didn't need a second invitation. He just put the Bentley in that gap, and like you say, he had the legs to get it out the corner in the lead.
We're just having a look down the order as well, because I think Utley is the leading Bentley, but there are only two Bentleys on the grid. There's Utley in 11th place and Newtlings in 14th, I believe. So the Bentley maybe not as strong around Kyalami as probably they would like to be, but they're enjoying themselves, trying to push for that top 10.
They are, and interestingly, Gav's in 17th place in the championship, and Newtlings in the other Bentley is in 16th place. So that's a good battle in the standings as well for those two guys.
Well, talking about good battles, Crossman is going to try around the outside of Hedges. So Hedges really going defensive into the first corner now. You can see him running very wide. Crossman's trying to look at the inside, but he's going defensive again, and he just can't quite get his Porsche nose up far enough up the inside to make sure it's sticking without contact. And you can see Hedges sort of getting away with it almost there. But, I mean, he looked like he really had the run, even down the start-finish straight.
That was textbook, Mr. Crossman there. He took a wide entry into that corner, knowing that the Porsche is fantastic on the power coming out. It really gets the drive down, and that was exactly his plan, to try and basically cut back underneath Dave and into turn 3 and 4, where they can run side by side until they get to turn 5. But Dave just basically, it was almost like he blocked him, because you could see the speed overrun that Crossman had.
Absolutely. As I said, it's going to be very difficult for Crossman to try and make that move, but it's so important. We're going to say it time and again. We are only 19 minutes really into this race as we shoot back to Wolf, and there's another sort of 40 minutes to go in the Ferrari, trying to put real pressure on Ack, who obviously made the mistake to let Utley through. He's now got pressure from Wolf in the Ferrari, and they take slightly different entries into this corner. Bit later on the brakes as the Ferrari, and he seems to be able to hook the apex up nicely, and he seems to be able to get a bit of a better drive than Nissan out the corners as well. So we might see a bit of a swapping of positions here, and a swapping of the positions just behind, because Kelsey and Neuterlings are also getting side by side, very tasty with each other, and yeah, they're giving each other a right good race and giving us something great to look at. But Crossman's back on the start finish straight. Will he be able to try and make that move into turn 2? Because turn 1 is going to be just a little bit too far away, but will he put the pressure on, go late on the brakes and take that wide line again?
No, it looks like Dave's covered it off. I think he's once bitten, twice shy. He's not going to let him come back in like that again. Not intentionally anyway. As we see Bliv in 14th there running down this straight. I don't think the I don't think the Bentley's going to get him, but it looks like he's lost a couple of places through a mistake he's made, and he's going to be on a recovery drive now to try and gain some of those places back.
Well, we've seen him make a couple of mistakes over the last couple of laps, so he needs to really just try and get his head down, get his head clear, not worry about any of the drivers around him, and just sort of like get his consistency back, really, because he's lost out to a Bentley and 2 Ferraris and almost another Bentley in the last couple of laps. And one man who's not really put a foot wrong so far is Dave Hedges. He's in 4th position still, and we've seen Crossman really trying to put the pressure on him throughout this entire race, really, since about the 2nd or 3rd lap. And he hasn't put a foot wrong so far, Dave. We've seen him with a little bit of a tidy, sort of missing 1 or 2 apexes, but his engine's just sort of sorted him out as he tries to drive away from him. We see Mitchell in 9th. He's putting a right good go on Martin Pilkington in the in the Aston Martin, sorry.
Yeah, Regan is a seasoned driver as well. I talk him up every week, and he has these good rounds, and he's had some unlucky rounds. He's a good driver. He's a consistent driver, and he'll keep the pressure on anybody that he's racing with. And I expect him to make a couple of places up. Or that's not to take away from anyone that he's racing, but he's just that sort of driver. He's tenacious. He'll keep going, and he'll put the laps in within a tenth of each other every single lap. He'll just keep going. We're seeing Haley's drop back to 2 seconds behind his teammate now. Aaron Walker in Steve in 3rd. So I'm just wondering if he's decided to just calm it down, settle down, because obviously he made that mistake, that bit of a slide he had. As we see Dean Parker on Ian Tampkin now as they come up into Le Coupe turn 10. Trying to get the run down on the inside, but that's maybe not going to work. The tighter line, as you can see, the tight line, the car didn't like that. It was stepping out sideways, and that's just cost him a bit of speed, so he's having to tuck back in and regroup and try and do it all over again.
It's always fascinating to jump back into this sort of midfield battle, because nearly everywhere you look, somebody's going to have a story to tell, and all these drivers are probably either on Discord with each other, or will sort of chat afterwards, or maybe in the GT4 build-up before they start the race, sort of talking about that GT3 race, and every single driver is going to come off this grid, come off this race with some sort of story to tell, and sort of talking, oh, I can't believe you lunged me there, or go around the outside of me, and that's sort of what club racing is all about. I say it quite a lot on a lot of my broadcasts, but this sort of racing with Simsport, I'm sure you'll agree, Steve, is very much like almost club racing in real life. You sort of, if you could, you'd also do the racing, and then in the evening have a pint with them and talk about it, that sort of thing. It's really inclusive and sort of friendly.
Yeah, it is absolutely. I mean, it is a community first and a race league second, because the guys we're all mates online. We have meetups. We know each other. I mean, it's a community first, and it's relatively friendly. Sometimes that people fall out a little bit if there's some really silly moves. We see Dean's going up the inside there. That is a brave move. If he can keep it tight and not force Ian off the track, which he didn't. But Ian's going to fantastic cut back there from the Jag. He's really making that Jag work, and it looks like he's going to have the inside line there into the S's.
I was about to interrupt you, but that was an absolutely fantastic move by Parker there in the Jaguar, and he seems to have got that car really hooked up. Tamkin just making that little bit of a mistake in the McLaren, just not able to sort of pitch the car in and get back on the power, but that is really brave as he makes a mistake and goes wide. Parker misses the corner, probably just touched the outside under braking, and unfortunately all that hard work and all that sort of compliments that we were throwing at him has gone out the window a little bit. He's going to have to do that again.
Yeah, he's probably going to blame us for that with the old commentator's curse. We shouldn't have, given him all the compliments. We should have just moved on swiftly.
Well, I mean, he can send us a message afterwards or leave a comment in the YouTube chat, I'm sure. Crossman then still only 3 tenths behind, not being able to make any moves on Hedges. But if we sort of go back to that sort of community feel, you said that you have almost like meetups towards the end of the British Touring Car meetings. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. We've not planned one for this year for obvious reasons, because we really don't know what's happening. But yeah, previously for the last 3 years, I believe it is, we've gone down to Brands Hatch for the final round of the touring cars for the full weekend, camped up, and we've had some of the guys that have been with us come from Denmark. There was one guy that was living in Scotland for a while, but he was a Canadian. He came down as well. So yeah, we get meetups. We have a few beers. We watch the racing. We talk about cars, obviously, and just have a good time.
Right, it sounds like the almost watching the racing is coming second, because that sounds like a fantastic sort of community-driven get-together, and it's an awesome excuse to have sort of a really good social life around some esport racing as well. As you can see, Crossman now trying to dive inside and out. He's trying to fill the mirrors of Hedges, just trying to force him into a mistake that he just doesn't seem like he's going to do at any point during this race. Of course, he may try the undercut Crossman and try and go into the pit slightly early, get out, put the flying lap time in, and maybe undercut Hedges. But he's going to have to start doing that sooner rather than later, because you said that the 30-minute mark is going to be the fastest sort of pit time. Well, we're coming up to the 30-minute mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think to get that move done now, I was just going to say, you beat me to it there. I would be, if I was Crossman, I would be thinking now, I'm within a couple of tenths. He's obviously holding me up. I'm going to pit and try and get that undercut done. As we see Newtlings there trying to make some positions up.
Yeah, and I'm just seeing, Crossman at the top as well. Hedges did make a mistake. He went on the outside, and as I said, it does make our job quite hard trying to follow 2 streams, but Crossman's trying to go around the outside. Hedges on the inside. Is he going to be able to get the cut back on him? No, he just drops out of it. So I thought he was going to be able to get the cut back, but Crossman thought better of it. Just twitched the Porsche the other way, and he's actually got Hartnell behind him. All of a sudden, caught these two right up as they start to battle, and this is going to be a 3-way battle for 4th place. Yeah,
for me now, the fact that Hartnell's caught them up, if definitely Crossman, I would pit this lap, because the last thing he needs now is that Ferrari putting him under pressure. He could quite easily lose a position there. He needs to get in the pits and get those tyres on and just try and make the difference on the outlap, but he's not doing it. But Hartnell, he's caught them up. He's thinking, right, new tyres, back out, fast laps, and I could jump potentially 2 positions.
Well, Crossman probably needs to get our stream up then, because he needs he needs to do something slightly different to get past Hedges, and an undercut probably would have been that. As they go past, he may well try and come in this lap, but Hedges will probably try and figure out his tactic as well, and maybe try and react to the fact that Crossman will come in, or maybe he'll make the move, but be bold and make the move first. We're not entirely sure. We're going to have to see how it plays out with 34 minutes to go bang on, and it's been a fantastic 27 minutes of 26 minutes of racing. My maths let me down there, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. Just catching up very quickly on the YouTube stream. We've got a few supporters for Diaz in there. We've got Chris Pinchbeck's mum. Come on, Pinchy, kiss, kiss, kiss. So come on, Chris, your mum's watching. Get your foot down, lad.
Yeah, otherwise Steve will be the one giving you the kiss, kiss, kisses. Yeah, Walker's still in 2nd place. And you say Haley, he dropped back nearly 2 seconds. He's straight back up as well. He's in 7/10 away, so he's very close. Diop in 13th place. He's trying to put the pressure. In fact, he's got past Ack, I believe. Yeah, he has got past Ack, so that's a new development. and the Audi trying to make his way through past the Nissan, and Ack seems to just be falling away a little bit, and here he is. Haley now 8 tenths behind his teammate. We saw him make a big mistake when he was about half a second behind his teammate previous. Made a big mistake, went down about 2 or 3 seconds, but he's made his way back up now. And as we were saying about the undercut, if I was Haley, I'd be thinking, let's get in the pits and try and make that move. You can see Hedges there. He hasn't lost out to Crossman quite yet.
Yeah, and if you remember about 3 or 4 laps ago, Haley was just short of 2 seconds as we see Crossman coming into the pits, so he's going to try and undercut. But yeah, Haley was nearly 2 seconds behind his teammate, so he's made up over a second in a couple of laps. So definitely he's maybe found a bit of extra pace now compared to his teammate. So yeah, he should be thinking about that undercut as well. It's going to be who blinks first, which one comes in first.
One person who doesn't really have to think too much about all that is probably our pole sitter and current race leader, Archie Clifford Roberts, who hasn't really had any problems at the front of the field. He hasn't had anyone to worry about since the first lap. He's just putting in qualifying time, so you can really see how much load he's putting through the car to try and make as much pace as possible. He doesn't really need to do this. He's 10 seconds ahead of Walker. He can probably just manage the time now and make sure he's consistently 7 or 8 seconds ahead of the second place car, but that's not really Archie's way by the looks of it. You know him better than me, Steve, but it looks like he's trying to put in qualifying laps.
Yeah, and he just races flat out. He will pace it, to a degree, but when you see these lead drivers, when they say they're just taking it easy, it might be a tenth or two slower than the best lap. That's all. To the naked eye, it still looks like they're pushing as if it were qualifying, and from experience, it's harder to drive a little bit steadier than it is harder to drive flat out sometimes. I think you'll agree on that one.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we say it quite a lot on my other broadcasts on a Tuesday night. We watch some MX5 racing, which is always amazing racing, but you see someone pull out a 5-second gap in a 15-minute race, as we see a McLaren going into the wall in the background there, and I'll get back to my point in a little bit. I'm sure we'll be able to get a replay, but McLaren just heading straight into the wall towards the last corner, and that's not ideal for them at all. I'm sure we'll be able to see who that was in a minute, but yeah, that's not good for them. As we see, Haley still hasn't come into the pits. He's decided to hunker up behind the gearbox of Walker and maybe try and use him as a bit of a slipstream. Maybe they'll let each other past, or maybe they're just going to out and out drive to win between them. But Haley's clearly the quicker driver. He's managed to catch up nearly a 2-second gap in probably in about 15 minutes, to be fair, but that doesn't mean that Walker's going to give it up easy.
No, and I think because Archie's checked out and he's over 10 seconds ahead now, these guys are actually battling for position and for pride. There's not a chance of really catching Archie now, as we're looking at Kelsey and Diop. Obviously, Diop had a drive-through. He was one of the top. I think he qualified in around about 6th, 7th place, something like that. So he's on a fight back through the field, and he's made his way back up to 9th, which is impressive considering he was probably around about dead last after lap 2.
Absolutely, he dives up the inside of the Ferrari and he makes the move stick. Now that was a late move. We see the Nissan of Ack just going off in the background, but the Ferrari's lost out in the position there. Shoots and Neuterlings in the Bentley. He's got Wiggin behind. No, he's not. He's got the Nissan GTR. I think that's Ack now. He's the updating. The timing screen on the left-hand side will update, but I think that is Ack hunkered up behind him. So unfortunately, Ack just sort of lost out there, making yet another mistake, and you can see the back end getting out a little bit even then.
Yeah, Mark Knightlings doesn't need a second invite when someone leaves the door open. He'll take that opportunity, and that Nissan certainly is looking a little bit loose. He was drifting around Sunset. Well, fantastic car control to keep it all together, but yeah, not the fastest way to get around Sunset.
And Walker has dived into the pits, so Haley has taken over second position on track, but Walker's dived into the pits, so they haven't gone for the undercut with Haley, but that probably means he'll be able to get free air and be able to get his head down, put some qualifying laps in maybe, and get the move stuck on Walker. But I'm sure Walker will be thinking, on the fresh tyres, he'll be able to get a quick lap in some free air. It's just whether or not he comes out in free air to be able to put those qualifying laps in. But Haley re-inherits the second position, and I'm sure he'll try and drive away as best he can.
Yeah, and Dave's obviously done his pit stop, come out in 15th place. Crossman is in 13th, so Crossman and Hartnell have both jumped Dave Hedges, interestingly. We see Kelsey's got a drive-through. That will be for track limits. You get three warnings, and then you have to serve a drive-through. And unfortunately, Kelsey's got one of those drive-through. But Dave will be cursing now. He has lost 2 places in the pit stops there. That's really unfortunate for him.
Well, it's a fantastic spot, I have to say. Steve, because I completely lost that one. But yeah, Dave Hedges now down in 15th position, but this is about the time that we see everybody diving into the pits. On the left-hand side, you'll see the timing tower. Everyone with a little P next to them means that they are in the pits. So you'll be able to sort of keep an eye out on who's going to end up where, because it'll take around about the 30-second margin of sort of in the pits to be able to get in and get out. And yeah, you were saying in the stream leading up to it that there's no fueling, is there, in these mandatory pit stops? It's only tyres.
It's absolutely only tyres. They are not allowed to take any fuel whatsoever. So these, once they've done their out lap, the first 2 or 3 laps after the pit stop will probably be some of the fastest laps in the race, because obviously the fuel loads come down from the start and they're on fresh tyres, so they'll be really pushing. And Crossman and Hartnell, the 2 guys that are pushing, and Hartnell's keeping on the back of Crossman now half a second, and Dave's trying to close up 2.5 seconds to Hartnell. Hartnell was talking to me through the week while testing the Ferrari, and he was really not downbeat, but he said things were against him at Kyalami because the Ferrari he didn't feel the track suits the car. So he's doing well to be where he is. He's really working hard because there's quite a few guys in front that need to carry out their pit stops yet.
It looked like he was really struggling towards the beginning of the race, but as the likes of Crossman and Hedges battled, we just saw Hartnell sort of come onto the back of that little pack, and we didn't really even realise it until he dived into the pits almost, because he sort of just came out of nowhere. But he's doing a fantastic job of keeping with Crossman, who we'd probably say is one of the quickest drivers out there at the moment. We could see him trying to get past Hedges. Obviously, we're not really taking Clifford Roberts into consideration there because we haven't seen that much of him. But he seems to be doing quite a good job, Hartnell, getting that Ferrari around, especially, as you say, if he was sort of lacking confidence.
Yeah, and I mean, he is. He's a trier, you know. I mean, like I say, I didn't want to say he was disheartened or despondent about it, because he's not. He'll turn up, he'll race, and he'll give it 110%, and that's exactly what he's doing. Kudos to Archie. He's done his pit stop and he's just back out in 4th place. So, you know, he's not lost a lot of places with his pit stop. He had a clear pit stop down to 5th place. Obviously, we've got Diop's got to make another pit stop. Haley and Pinchbecker to take pit stops. Newtling's still got to take a pit stop. Wiggins, Kelsey. So the top 10 will sort itself out. Archie will be back in the lead. It's just whether Steve Haley's going to come out in front of Aaron Walker when the pit stops are done or not.
Well, I'm sure Haley was probably thinking and wishing that Clifford Roberts would come out behind Newtling, so they would be able to sort of hold each other up slightly, but it was about a 12-second gap, and I don't think that's going to disappear anytime soon, because Clifford Roberts has just got free air in front of him, nice new tyres, lighter car than he did before. I'm sure he'll just be sort of getting the job done and pulling away and doing a fantastic job of it. We sound like, it's... people watching might think, it's a bit boring or something, but don't get me wrong, this is an extremely hard car to get this sort of time out of. He's doing an exceptionally brilliant job, is Clifford Roberts. He just seems to be the class of the field in this race around Kyalami.
Yeah, and we see Haley, Pinchbeck and Neutlings are all in the pits now, so let's keep an eye on Haley in particular to see if he can get back out in front of Aaron, because that's the teammate battle for 2nd place.
Well,
in fact, he hasn't. No, sorry to jump in there, but yeah, Aaron's managed to retain that position, albeit by 3/10.
Yeah, Walker seems to have got that position sort of sorted, and you can't really even see Haley in the background. So although it says 3/10 on your timing tower, in actual real life, once they come across the first sector timing, sort of break the timing screen, there'll probably be a bigger gap, because Haley's lost out big time really there, and I'm not entirely sure why, just whether or not he made some mistakes. We didn't see him in any amount of sort of battles or traffic, but he doesn't seem to be able to get that time down. Diop is in the race lead at the moment on track, but he'll obviously have to take his pit stop, and Clifford Roberts will retake the race lead.
Yeah, there's a few different factors when it comes to taking a pit stop. Just like in real life, you do have to hit your pit marker bang on, otherwise the sim will move you to the correct position and the timer will not start. The guys won't work on your car until you are in that position, so that can cost you 2 or 3 seconds sometimes just to get into the right place.
Crossman's on the outside of Wiggin. This is for position, but Wiggin will obviously have to take a pit stop, but that's not meaning that Hartnell's not trying to take advantage and maybe going up the inside of Crossman. Crossman's going to have to try and make this move stick sooner rather than later, because otherwise he'll have the Ferrari all over the back of him, and he'll have Dave Hedges as well coming up near him. Kelsey will have to take that pit stop. He's going around the outside as Crossman, and that is an unbelievable move if he makes it stick. Will Wigan be able to dive back into the pits? Because I'm sure that's probably where he wants to be, or will Hartnell be held up as well? That is a fantastic move, Steve, by Crossman.
Oh, he had to do that because, I mean, it's the old argument. Wigan, it's a fight for position, but he's got a pit. So does he want to be racing him? It's not really his race, so he probably made that a little bit easier for Chris than he needed to. But Hartnell will be really spitting feathers. He'll want to get past Wigan just as fast and just as easy, which he's going to do now on the brakes. Maybe into turn one, he's forcing that door open. Indeed, and Wigan isn't really giving him the space to do that easily. He's making him fight for it as they go side by side through the first couple of corners.
Well, he was saying that Wigan maybe made it a bit easy, but that's Hartnell into the wall. And obviously, Wigan wasn't making it easy at all for him, as the Ferrari ends up in the wall and he ends up backwards again. He can't quite get it facing in the right direction. And Hartnell, after all his hard work and fantastic sort of rhythm that he got into, is ended up facing the wrong way. Haley, we're on board with now, but that is absolutely gutting for the Ferrari.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate because, I probably get shot in the comments, but when maybe you're a pit stop out of sync, do you want to be battling with those guys? Do you really want to affect their race? I don't know. Me personally, I would have possibly let them through. Maybe I'm wrong, but like I said, don't shoot me in the comments. It's an opinion.
Well, Wigan certainly wasn't making it easy for Crossman. He certainly didn't make it easy for the Ferrari of Hartnell either. Hedges is now the man behind Crossman, but there's quite a big gap. There's a 2.5 second gap between him and Crossman. So Crossman's really just going to try and get his head down and catch Haley, but there's almost a 3 second gap, and we can go to a replay here. And he can focus on Wigan. He's just clipped the curb, and that's ended up putting his McLaren a little bit too close to the Ferrari and just understeering into him. So, I mean, it's difficult, really. Should Wigan have been there to make that position, to try and force Hartnell around the outside? It's one of those opinions I'm sure the stewards will have a look at. But he just clipped the curb. He didn't do it maliciously. It's a difficult one to call, Steve.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, I mean, it was all good until that front wheel hit the curb, and obviously that was out at Reese. Wigan couldn't control that. It jumped the car across a couple of foot into the back corner of the Ferrari. Interestingly, seeing Dave Hedges having to take avoiding action, he jumps over the curbs to avoid there, but all was good there, I believe. As we see Hartnell, he's down in 10th place, and he'll be on a real mission now. Hopefully, no real damage from that. It was pretty much a simple spin, and he'll be able to keep his lap times consistent and get some places back.
Well, I'm sure Hedges' on-board camera, if he's recording or streaming, will probably look like, the Ferrari ends up going wide and, just spins off, really. I'm not entirely sure. His car is completely under load in that section of the track, and it's just whether or not he hit the brakes and came off the throttle a little bit too quickly about the transition of the weight in the car and just ended up flicking it round. And unfortunately, he's just ended up going even further off, so that's not ideal for him. But I'm sure, as I was saying, Dave Hedges, if he is able to record his onboard or he's streaming it or recording it, I'm sure it'll probably look like an action movie as he tried to dive through those two cars, because he looked like he was all airborne over the curbs. It was fantastic to see. Yeah,
it looks like James has got going again in 13th place. I mean, you sort of question, and we'll probably have a chat with him afterwards in the, after the race in Discord. We'll see whether there was a bit of red mist there as well, because he was obviously just straight after the other incident. Maybe he was just trying a little bit too hard, and as you say, maybe a little bit of driver error there caused that.
Well, if he was obviously spinning a couple of corners before, then is there a possibility maybe that his tyres were overheated, and the fact that maybe would sort of make the difference in the handling and how you sort of apply the throttle and apply the brake? And I know in real life, if your tyres are hot, they just turn to mush. It probably happens the same way in a Assetto Corsa.
It does indeed, and it affects the tyre pressures, obviously, just as it does in real life. So you'll have had high tyre temps, high tyre pressures, and less traction, which would have probably all contributed to the incident. But Dean Riley doing a sterling job in 9th place, 1 second off Pilkington, and who's 4 seconds off Mitchell. So Mitchell, as I said earlier, he was down in 9th or 10th place when I said he expect him to make a few places. He's up to 7th now, 1.2 behind Pinchbeck, who's doing a fantastic job in a new car. Remember I said he'd switch to the Audi, so that's obviously really suiting his driving style, and he's doing really well.
Well, the Audis do lock out. They lock out 5 of the top 6 positions around Kyalami, and there's not many Porsches really either. There's only Crossman really that we've seen. We're on board with Diaz as he tries to put the Bentley under pressure of Smith. No, in fact, that's wrong. I'm not entirely sure who Diaz is chasing there, but I think it's Newterlings, actually. And,
yeah. And just jump in there, we see Kelsey, who had the drive-through penalty, has now got a stop-go penalty, which is usually issued for speed limit infraction in the pit lane. So he's obviously clicks these cars automatically, when you're in first gear, stick to the pit limit, but he's obviously clicked second gear before the end of the pit lane. And,
fantastic spot that, actually. And I just sorry to jump in, because Hartnell's also in the pits to follow on that little sort of train of thought, shall we say. Hartnell has jumped into the pits. He's in 18th, but he's going to be a couple of laps down now, so he may have had a problem as he hit the wall. We did see him touch the wall. We didn't think he was actually going to have any damage, but that might be why he ended up spitting the car out again further down that lap.
Yeah, it may be that he's decided to call it a day and retire the car and regroup for Monza, which is the next round.
Well, we're 24 laps in, 18 minutes to go, just under, and Clifford Roberts still holds the race lead. And with just under 18 minutes to go, we'll give you a full rundown, well, the top 10 rundown of the order. Clifford Roberts is leading this race, as he has done since the start. Walker is in second place, as he has been since about the second lap, as well as Haley in third, the teammate of Walker. Crossman has made his way past Dave Hedges. It took a long time coming, but a good pit strategy meant that Crossman undercut Hedges, who is in 5th position. Pinchback, as you said, he's swapped to the Audi, and he's in 6th position. Mitchell in the Mercedes is 7th. Martin Pilkington is in the Aston Martin in 8th place. Riley is in the Ferrari in 9th, and Utley in the sort of leading Bentley is currently in 10th position. And I think I did the rundown because I think all the pits have been completed.
Yeah, I think we're seeing it as it really stands now, with all pit stops completed. And yeah, as you say there, Gav, he's done a good job. He's up to 10th place. He's making the Bentley work and keeping the times honest. Just back over to YouTube, just some comments. We've got Aaron's wife Amy. Come on, Aaron, go, kiss, and I'm sure she'll give you a kiss if you finish in second place, mate. Well done. A couple more of the Diaz squad here making comments. So yeah, come on, Diaz. Where are you? Where's Diaz? He's in 22nd at the moment, so he's getting a lot of support. So maybe that's worth a few positions to him.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you everyone who's obviously commenting, everyone who's watching, and hopefully you're enjoying this racing that we're bringing to you. It's been a good 45 minutes almost of racing, and hopefully it'll be a good final 16 as well. And to be fair to Walker, actually, we haven't really given him his props, I don't feel, because I personally have been saying that Haley maybe is the quicker driver, and whether or not team orders will let him through because he's higher up in the Drivers' Championship. And Walker, honestly, has done a fantastic job in second place. He's not quite as quick as Clifford Roberts, but in an hour race to be only 12 seconds behind, considering he didn't qualify quite as highly, is extremely impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, he's come into his own in this second half of the race, as he's got the laps in, and he's now got that gap, and he's not under as much pressure from his teammate, so he's been able to drive his own lines, put his times in, as we ride on board with Chris now in the EBM Porsche as he comes up into turn 10. Why is it we always cut to the car and I try to pronounce that corner, Le Cop? It's always turn 10 when we come to them. I think someone's out to get me, but yeah, Chris is trying to close the gap up on Haley, but that's going to be a tall order with he's 5.7 behind. So he's putting the laps in. Chris has done a fantastic job in this race, kept Dave under pressure, made the right choice on the pit stops, even though maybe I was questioning his strategy. It's worked out right for him. So kudos, credit to him there, and he's going to have a strong position here in 4th.
He's driven a fantastic race. I mean, after the first couple of laps, obviously he qualified a little bit higher up, and I'm sure he'll be a bit disappointed not to sort of take that into the first couple of corners, first couple of laps. But he's just driven brilliantly since then. He's put the pressure on the cars in front of him. He's not made any contact. He's made sure that they know they're there, or he's driven them into a mistake. And honestly, he's making that Porsche really work, considering I think it's the only Porsche in the field. He's making it work fantastically, and he's bringing it to what is obviously the dominant car around here, which is the Audis, and really sort of making them work for their positions. And I think he will probably end up catching Haley come the end of this lap. We've got 15 minutes, and it's almost like we're looking at a sprint race now between 4th and 3rd position.
Yeah, and just to sort of put Crossman's consistency, his best lap's a 140.7, his last lap was a 140.9. So he's literally within a couple of tenths each lap. He's just putting the times in, he's just keeping his head down and keeping going. And as I keep saying through the stream, and I said right at the beginning, these lads will just race to the flag. they will just keep doing the qualifying laps as fast as they can to the flag, and they'll keep going and trying to hit those apexes, get the times down, and take the battle to each other.
That's exactly what we want to see here today on Simply Race. In association and being streamed by Simply Race, the Simsport Racing ACC Season 3 here at Round 4. I just thought I'd get that full title in. Of course, next week, before I forget, next week we're going to Monza, and I'm sure you'll have Alex back in the comms as well with you, Steve. But that should be an interesting race as well. What's the sort of breakdown of the Monza races? Is it another 60 minutes? Is it 90 minutes? What's the crack?
I'll just have a quick look, actually, to be fair. You've caught me on the hop there and didn't have a look, but I believe it's an endurance race next week, so let me just have a quick look.
Well, while you have a look at that, I'll just tell you that Host is being overtaken by Smith. By the looks of it, the Lexus is up the inside of Host as he was looking to try and get past the Jaguar of Parker. They're all sort of going on the grass a little bit, and this is looking like a big lunge. Oh, I thought he was going to go into the back of the Jag there. The Lexus has gone wide. The Mercedes has just managed to make it stop, and the Jag is driving away a little bit, and the Bentley's taking advantage of, yes, I think that is, I can't quite see who the Bentley is, but Host has managed to keep his position. Parker's managing to just stay out of trouble.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And just to go back to the Monza, yes, it is a 90-minute race in 2 weeks at Monza, so that should be some good action back to an endurance sort of length race of 90 minutes.
Well, I just want to ask as well before we jump off. I mean, it's probably a question for not on stream, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you ever think of putting teams into a longer endurance, say a 4-hour, but you have to make a driver change, or is that something that you guys haven't really looked into yet?
No, we have. We've had some. Before we do any leagues, we always do test races just for fun races, and we have been running a series of driver swap races where we've done up to 3-hour races and had teams of usually 2 drivers, but we've only allowed driver stints of around 30 minutes, so you're literally hot lapping and swapping just to make sure all the driver swap functions work and we're getting all the server settings right before we actually go live to the public and get an egg on our faces by making silly mistakes. So yeah, it's something we're testing, it's something we're looking at. And there's someone goes off in the background there. Not quite sure, was that Richard Smith?
I think it might have been, and that Bentley that I was talking about just before, he's been in on the mix of this little battle, is actually Utley, so he's actually going through some back markers, these guys, and you can see he's driven away already, but the Mercedes has lost out to the Jaguar and the Audi. I believe that is actually Walker, so they don't really have to worry about the Audi just ahead of them, but these two very, very close. You can see the Mercedes going over the inside. That's De Horst trying to make the apex, and he just can't quite get that move done, and Parker doing a fantastic job of just sort of getting his momentum around the outside of the corner and not really being held up at all, even though the Mercedes looks like he's really trying to put him under pressure.
Yeah, the Jaguar is not a car of choice, it has to be said. There's not a lot of people race the Jaguar. It just seems a little bit harder car to get the maximum out of. But yeah, Mr. Parker there is not doing a bad job as a new member of Simsport this season. He's finding his feet and he's having his battles. Well,
I'm sure he's enjoying this race as well with De Horst. As we were saying before, it's really all about, as we see De Horst maybe getting a bit too keen on the power with these tyres just going off. He's, of course, been probably on it for about the 20-minute mark now on these tyres, and they'll start to just drain away in the fact that the car's just a little bit lighter than it was before. As soon as you step on the power, the big engine that the Mercedes got, it'll probably just start to spin the rear wheels up a little bit, and that won't help his tyre life at all either. Going through fast corners like Sunset, we've seen people stepping their back end out, and he's going to have more of those problems going through Sunset and the S's and trying to break into turn 10, Le Coupe. But yeah, he's really trying to push the car.
Yeah, absolutely, and once, like you say, once you start getting the car stepping sideways, you start to put generating extra heat, taking a bit of life out of the tyres. They've got the ability to turn the traction control up on the move, so that's probably a move he needs to make. Just click it up one and just accept the fact you're going to have a bit of interference on acceleration, but it's better than wasting those tyres away. But as he's keeping Parker honest. He's making those sideways mistakes, but he keeps reeling Parker in, so he's probably got the legs on it. It's just being able to make the move, and we've seen in previous rounds that Mr. Parker knows how to defend, and he just needs to hit Kyalami just needs to hit the apexes and get the braking points right, and it's going to be difficult to pass.
Well, everyone says in sort of racing, whether it's esports or real life, don't drive in your mirrors. And it's just all about hitting, as you said, hitting your apex, hitting your braking zones, getting them smooth power on the exit, and just making sure that you're not doing any silly mistakes. And as soon as you start driving in the mirrors, so basically looking in your mirrors instead of looking where you're going and looking at the car, where on earth the car, who's attacking you is, that's when you start making the mistakes that you miss the braking zone. Especially if you're traveling at about 150 miles an hour, a glance in your rear view mirror can be the difference between hitting your braking zone and missing it by 20 yards. So Parker doing a fantastic job here of showing you sort of how to absorb pressure without really having to worry about the car behind, because he knows around Kyalami it's really difficult for him to throw it up the inside, so he doesn't really need to worry about leaving the door open. He just needs to worry about hitting his apex.
Yeah, absolutely. You drive your own race, and those are wise words. Just drive your own race and put it where you need it to be. It is up to the guy behind to get round you, and if you hit your apexes, as we said, that's going to be very difficult.
Clifford Roberts has taken the 30th lap, and we are 8 minutes to go on this 60-minute race of round 4 of the ACC Season 3 on Simsport Racing, and it's been a great race as well. The 60 minutes have just flown by. To Horse really trying to throw it around Parker, and we were saying that the time's flown by. Well, To Horse wants to fly by Parker, but he's not quite having it just yet, and he's still unable to really get a move on this car. Will he try and make it onto the inside here? Parker tries to fend it off, and in fact, you can see him go defensive. To Horse goes to try and round the cut back. Parker has finally made a mistake, but he's able to carry the momentum round. That means he's going to be on the outside for this flick right. Oh, you can see him running very wide, and he's going to lose out in that position. To Horse has his nose in front. He gets late on the brakes, and he makes the position. Finally, here's into the last corner. Across the start-finish line he comes, and he starts 7 minutes to go in 19th place.
Round of applause for those guys there. That was fantastic racing. Mr. Parker took advantage of a little run off the track to try and keep the position. No contact whatsoever, side by side for a couple of corners there. Fantastic driving, and that's for 19th place. That's how hard these guys are all battling throughout the field. But one thing I have noticed on the timing screens, Mr. Walker is pulling away from Mr. Haley. Well, he's 3.5 seconds in front of Mr. Haley. I say he's pulling away, he's not. He's 3.5 seconds is the gap. But Mr. Crossman has closed the gap down to Mr. Haley to 1.1, just under 1.2 seconds. So can Mr. Crossman catch Mr. Haley in the last 6.5 minutes? It's a tall order. It won't be easy to pass if he does catch him, but he has closed the gap. Well,
Crossman was clearly a lot quicker than Dave Hedges, and that gap is now 8.5 seconds. We saw Crossman really struggling to get past him before, and it's clear that he's a lot quicker than Hedges, because as I said, it's about 8.5 seconds is the gap. He's really caught up to the backside of that Audi now in Haley, but we couldn't see Crossman make the move before. Will we be able to see him do it now? If we're looking at the championship order, Clifford Roberts is all but guaranteed to extend his championship lead. Crossman was in 146. He was in second place, drawing with Critchley, who's not here, of course. But Haley, who's just ahead of Crossman, was 143. Now, you'll know better how the championship points are divvied up, but for most scoring systems, that means Haley might just jump Crossman into second place.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, like you say, there's he will. He's looking at 3 points, and that I think they'll end up coming out tying on points. To be honest, I'll have to have a check on that. But yeah, pretty much they'll be tying. I believe it's that close on the points. But Crossman, I wouldn't count on him not getting past yet. He's going to put him under pressure. Steve certainly knows how to absorb pressure. He's a very seasoned racer. He's been sim racing on the PC for many years, more years than he'll probably admit. But he will soak the pressure up. Let's see if Chris can put the move on him, as he's now within 7/10, and he's going to look for the slipstream. And I think the next couple of laps he's going to really tag onto the back of Steve and try and get the job done.
Well, it may all come down to who's looked after their tyres the best, the Audi or the Porsche, and really it's going to be fantastic racing to see. And if they do put any moves on each other, then we're in for a fantastic 5 minutes of racing, because we are now below the last 5 minutes. It's been 55 minutes of action-packed all up and down the field, every single driver enjoying themselves and having some great Sunday night racing. What better way to spend a Sunday night, really? But yeah, it's fantastic to see the final 5 minutes. The race is coming down to this. Clifford Roberts has driven 32 impeccable laps Walker has driven this race like he's had no pressure whatsoever, even though he's had his teammate up his backside for the first half. But since then, he hasn't put a foot wrong. Haley seems to just be losing that little bit of time, and Crossman, after turning his Porsche on after the first couple of laps, has been pretty much unstoppable, and he's trying to chase down that final podium position.
Indeed, yeah, and I was just looking at the points there, to be honest, trying to work out where things were going to end up at the end of this race, and the difference between third and fourth place is 4 points. So that will be 1 point in the lead for Mr. Haley over Chris Crossman if he can maintain that position. So the championship standings will be affected by this position.
Well, Crossman, that probably, if he's working all that in his head, he knows who's ahead of him. He'll probably be really trying to push to try and get past Haley. Or will he be a little bit more conservative and think, you know what, let's take the points. He's only a couple of points ahead of me going into the next round. He might be thinking he's strong at Monza. He's got a 90-minute race to try and put the move on Haley, and he'll see where he comes out. But Monza, it's a very engine-heavy circuit, and if the Porsche doesn't have the top speed of the Audis, then he may struggle with that a bit.
Yeah, I mean, the people who have been watching the stream from the streams from the first round will remember at the Nurburgring the roles were reversed, and it was for the race win. Crossman took the win there, but he was hounded to the finish line by Haley, who was literally for the last 3 or 4 laps within half a second of him, really piling pressure on him. But Crossman absorbed that pressure, so now we've got a role reversal, and let's see what the guys can do.
Well, it's a role reversal, and it's half a second in it as well, as this is a sort of area where the Porsche is really a lot quicker than the Audi. We're coming up to the Sunset sort of area, Sunset and Clubhouse Bend and the S's, and that's really where the Porsche's chassis and the braking really comes into its own compared to the Audi. The Audi has a nice big engine, and don't get me wrong, it's pretty tidy through the corners as well, but this is where you probably see the Porsche just try and close up. He clips the apex there and clips a bit too much curb, and that ends up falling him back as he tries to try and make up that move as well. He'll probably have maybe 1, maybe 2 laps after this as well. Clifford Roberts is still in the lead. He's done 33 laps, and it all comes down to where he finishes really. But you can see the braking force of the Porsche coming up to the back of the Audi of Haley. He's certainly got the opportunity, if he's able to get close enough under those brakes, to try and make the move on Haley.
He has, yeah. Those camera shots from the rear of the car when the guys are as close as they are, absolutely fantastic. They give you a little bit of a feeling for speed. And as we say, thanks to everyone who's watching on all the various social media or YouTube platforms. If you're liking what you see, certainly give us a thumbs up, share the streams, subscribe, hit the alert bell, you know, all the usual stuff. We really want to get this footage out as far as we can and get the audience grown, because it's absolutely, I'm sure it'll be fantastic racing.
Indeed it has, and it's not over yet, as Crossman 6 tenths behind. He's not quite coming out the final corner as cleanly as he would have liked, which means he's not quite got the slipstream on Haley that he would have liked. But we're probably coming up to what will be the final lap of the race. We've got just over a minute to go, and I believe this sort of lap time is about 1.5 minutes. So I think this might be the final lap of the race. Wherever Clifford Roberts is will dictate that. In fact, we're going to have a look at him now, and he's just got nobody in sight behind him. He's driven a fantastic race as Clifford Roberts. He's deservedly the race lead, he's deservedly the championship leader, and he's deservedly extending that as well. So great racing by Archie. We haven't spoken too much about him, but he's driven impeccably, and you can see on the bottom right of your screen is keeping an eye on Crossman. But I mean, Clifford Roberts, he hasn't put a foot wrong.
No, as I said, I mean, I'll take full credit for that, because I said at the beginning of the race, if they let him get away, he'll just go. He won't make a mistake. He'll put the laps in. He'll pin it, and he's proved it. He's done it for the last couple of weeks, where he's just, you know, he just stretches his legs. He goes. He doesn't make a mistake, and it's unfortunate that when you've got a driver as good as that puts the gap on everybody, he doesn't get the probably the camera time he deserves. But you know, he won't be bothered about that. Won't actually. He's here for the championship points, not the 5 minutes of fame. He's out to you know, win the championship. He won season 2, so he's the defending champion.
Well, he's come across the line with 5 seconds to go, which means we will have one more lap of racing. So that's probably music to the ears of Crossman, who's not been able to quite make the move on Haley, but he's going to have one more lap to try and do something about it. So this is going to be on to the final lap of the race. Clifford Roberts has driven impeccably. He started the 36th lap, but Crossman is by no means finished with Haley, as the Audis currently lock out the top 3 positions. Walker's just dropped back a little bit, so Haley's just caught them up a little bit, but he's going to be in absolutely no trouble at all as Walker. As we see Crossman trying to take the tighter line. Haley trying to use all the track as possible. It's going to be extremely tight, Steve. Which way do you see this going? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Put me on the spot. By all means, I see Haley keeping that position. I don't think he's going to make a mistake. Interesting what you said. Archie crossed the line with only a couple of seconds to go. Hopefully that won't catch anybody out with short fueling, because one lap it's 3 or 4 litres, so hopefully everyone's got enough fuel to get to the flag. But as we see, Crossman, he's got the inside line. Have I put the commentator's curse on Haley?
Well, he's going to be up the inside as Crossman. He's not been able to quite make that move stick, and he just clips that apex, which means Haley keeps the position as we see Clifford Roberts coming around the final couple of corners. But, I'll tell you what, I think that might have been the opportunity that Crossman was looking for. Haley just went a touch wide, and now he's made his braking zones, made his apexes into that corner where we definitely thought he was going to be able to make a move. That was turn 10, La Coupe. But we see Clifford Roberts now coming across the final corner to take race victory here at Kyalami. Kyalami, there we go. And he's going to take the well-deserved race victory, lights the flag finish, and extending his championship order is the man in first place, Clifford Roberts. And it's not done, though, because Walker's in second place, Haley's in third at the moment, and Crossman is coming up to the final corner as well. He hasn't done enough. He's going to have to settle for fourth position as they come across the line. Walker takes home second place. Haley comes home in third after a hard-fought last couple of laps with Crossman, and Crossman comes home in fourth. Hedges will probably come across the line in fifth place as soon as he gets there, but that was an extremely tough last couple of laps for Haley, wasn't it?
It was indeed, and the battle is still going on. We've got Diop, who's only half a second behind Utley in that Bentley, 6/10 behind now. But yeah, they're battling down the field for the final positions, and it's as you say, well-deserved win for Archie. Well-driven Aaron, he soaked up the pressure. Haley, fantastic with Crossman, never giving up attitude. He stuck it out behind Hedges. He made it count in the pits. He caught the gap up to Haley, he just couldn't get past him.
No, he could not. And I'll tell you what, Crossman is probably one of the smartest drivers I've seen in broadcasting over the last couple of weeks, because I honestly thought if that was some MX5 racing, which I like to cover on a Tuesday night on iRacing, then we would have seen him throw around the outside, the inside, through the man, over the man, any which way you could try and get past. But that's not the GT racing way, and Crossman doing a good job in fourth place. I'm sure he'll be happy with the points haul he's taken home, even if he does lose out on that second place. He'll be sure to come to Monza with a bit more ferocity. I'm sure put plenty of practice in and maybe try and take that second place away from Haley.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about the championship at the end of the day. But I mean, Chris is going to be up against it at Monza. It's not really favouring the Porsche too much. It's obviously the top speed cars. The AMG I know goes very well around there. The Audi goes well around there. The Ferrari will do okay. The Porsche will really be on the back foot. But that's not to say that Chris isn't a very talented driver, and he'll wring every ounce of performance out of that Porsche. And hopefully his teammate Kev Critchley will be there in the sister Porsche as well, and they'll take a couple of the top spots with them.
Absolutely, yeah. I think we will hopefully have a chat to a couple of the podium finishers as soon as they jump into our waiting room, where they are told to jump in really rather quickly, but hopefully we'll be able to do that sooner rather than later. But a great race, and thank you, obviously, everybody who's tuned in to watch, who's liked, who's subscribed, who's followed, and all that sort of thing. It's been great to cover it from my perspective as a newcomer, and I believe we have got Stephen Haley in the waiting room, Steve, so I believe we're going to try and drag him in. I think Steve, hello, are you there?
Yeah, we'll just unmute our mics, mate.
Oh right, yeah, of course. Sorry, I'm just new to all this streaming, so I'm just going to quickly unmute my mic. There we go, Stephen. Congratulations, are you there?
Yep. I'm here. Yep.
That was hard fought towards the end, but fully well-deserved podium.
Yeah, thank you. I knew Chris would be quick in the Porsche here. I kind of don't know what happens for his start, but he seems to have got a bad start, and I kind of jumped him into the first corner. A fairly lonely race, to be fair, but a great result for the team. Massive congratulations to Archie and Aaron, my teammate. Onward and onward.
Yeah, well, I mean, at the beginning you were quite close to Archie, I think it was, Walker, I believe, because I'm quite new to this, sorry. But yeah, you were quite close to Walker at the beginning of the race, and you looked like you almost had the time on him. You looked like you could be able to put more consistent laps in. You were sort of reeling him in slightly. But then towards the second half of the race, that sort of dropped off a little bit. Was there something that happened in the pit stop that we just missed?
No, I think I nailed the pit stop, to be fair. If you just nudge a bit too far forward, you lose time. The pit entry for this track is very, very, what can we say, iffy. You're coming off a fast line straight into the pit, and your pit limit board is right there. So you've got to make sure. I think I may have tapped the wall on the inside of the pit lane. I can't remember. I mean, it didn't cost me too much time, but I think obviously Aaron went on to newer tyres before I did. And I think he made use of the new rubber with the lower fuel load. So, yeah, it is what it is. I'm happy with third place.
Well, I imagine you would be happy with third place because I think you've inherited, I don't want to speak too soon, but I think you've inherited second place in the championship, which you must be pretty pleased about. And with that Audi, you must be pretty confident heading towards Monza.
Monza.
I'm putting you on the spot here, Stephen. I thought I would do it the kind way.
The Audi's a new car to me, so I'm still getting to grips with it. I could do with another half a second, but yeah, I mean, Monza should be fun. I think there's going to be faster cars. The AMG will be one to look out for in particular. But all we can do is we can fingers crossed and hope for the best.
Well, just one final question as well. Sort of what was it like absorbing the pressure from Crossman in those last couple of laps? And then obviously there was probably one more lap that you might not have expected because Archie crossed the line and he was about 5 seconds to go and he started like one more flying lap almost. Were you hoping it was going to end one lap earlier?
To be totally honest with you, I was watching the clock and I was watching Archie's gap, and I was kind of secretly wishing that was going to be the last lap because I knew Chris was catching. On the last lap, or maybe in the second to last lap, I had a real a bit of a lock up into one of the left-handers at the back of the circuit, and Chris really he could have capitalised on that, I think, but. Thankfully, it all went well. I don't know if he made a mistake as well, but I'm, very happy.
Well, one last thing as well is, I don't know, they normally do this on this kind of broadcast because obviously I'm brand new, but would you like to give a shout out to anybody watching, any fans or any family that may be watching out there?
I know my wife may be watching with the kids, but I know my dad, Brian, I know he'll be watching, so hey up, Dad.
Very nice. Well, thank you very much, and well done on your podium, Stephen. Go and enjoy the rest of your Sunday night.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
And I believe somebody's joined our commentary booth. Is that Chris Crossman? Are you there, Chris?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm not bad, Chris. Very well done on that race. That was hard for you, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a really fun race, to be honest. I wasn't sure what to expect before it, but I don't know if you've noticed, I had a pretty bad start and got jumped by a couple of people. It's not the best starting place, to be honest, Kyalami, because you kind of, if you start in second like I did, you kind of got an advantage because first on the outside to the first hairpin. So to try and get around that, I was trying to back off a tiny bit just to make sure first had a little bit more room, but I'd done it at the wrong time and got caught on the lights. So a couple of people got past me, but I'll have to watch the replay because I did feel a bit of a bang from someone. So I had a little bit of damage, but it wasn't too bad. I was just going along, and it's so hard to get past on Kyalami. I was actually doing quite good lap times, but I was just struggling at certain corners where I normally kind of throw the car around. When there's a car in front, you've got to be a little bit, careful. So yeah, I struggled the first half, but then got some new tyres, got some fresh track in front of me, and started to catch up with the second and third place. And I think if a few more laps, it would have been very close between us, to be honest. But yeah, it was a great battle. Aaron, Archie, and Steve all raced brilliantly. So yeah, I can't be too disappointed with fourth.
Well, no, you can't be disappointed with fourth at all because it was some great racing to spectate for us as well, and obviously for us to call on. You had sort of split it up into two halves, really, the 60-minute race. You had a brilliant sprint race almost with Hedges in that first half an hour. You seemed to throw everything at him, but you just couldn't quite make the moves stick.
That's it. It's really hard, like I say, to get past on Kyalami, I think. And there was a couple of times where he went a little bit, deep, and I thought, right, I'm going to get the move here. But obviously, you can't take the racing line, so we were kind of battling a bit, and I just couldn't get good past him, to be honest. So I was thinking about dipping into the pits a few laps early, but I wasn't sure how much back markers I'd get stuck behind. So I did try and jump him, and I think it worked. So I was happy when I finally got past him, and I could aim to try and get podium, but it was just a little bit out of reach. But it was a brilliant race, to be fair. First half with Dave, and then second half just slowly trying to catch up.
Well, one battle that sort of caught my attention and sort of sticks in the memory as well is your battle with the Ferrari, I think, of Hartnell. And he was sort of like, he was quite close straight after your pit stop. And then you had to go around the outside of a McLaren who hadn't pit yet. He didn't make it easy for you, even though it was arguably for track position, but he hadn't made the pit stop. What was your sort of view on that? Because you made an amazing move around the outside, and then the Ferrari disappeared out your rearview mirror.
Yeah, well, I wasn't. It's obviously one of those things where he doesn't have to let me by. So even though I'd caught up, he doesn't have to get position, and I did anticipate that a few times. There was a couple of times I was flashing the lights just to try and say, look, I'm going to make the move. But on that particular one, I was just getting a bit frustrated because I could see James Hartnell, who was a fast driver, catching me. And I thought, if I don't get past him soon, James is going to jump past me. So I just had to try and brake really late on that corner and managed to do it. But fair play to him, he didn't outbrake. There was a couple of times I had a few people slightly outbraking it, making it hard for me to go around the outside. And I thought Hartnell might have actually got past me. But no, it was a great race from my perspective. Had a lot of fun.
Well, I'm glad you had a lot of fun. You also had a lot of screen time as well. So, Chris, congratulations. Is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to and thank you for watching or anything like that?
I'm not sure if there'll be anyone watching that I know, to be honest, other than potentially Kev Critchley, who's another driver who might have been watching this from back home, having a rest week. He's actually with his wife, but if he was watching, how Kevin? He's my teammate in the championship, so I'm happy that I obviously finished in front of him just because he didn't race, but he's very fast, so...
Well, I'm very much looking forward to maybe tuning in once you got Alex back in the commentary booth and tuning in for Monza next week. Are you looking forward to that just before we let you go?
Not in the Porsche, to be honest, no, but I'll give it my best shot.
No, we were speculating that the Audi and the Mercedes might have the legs on you a little bit there at Monza, but good luck for it next week, and thank you very much for dropping in.
Good, buddy.
And that was Chris Crossman there coming home in 4th place, and obviously we heard from a 3rd place man as well in Haley, but he obviously jumped to 2nd place in the championship. And Steve, just before we go, what was your final thoughts on that?
Awesome, as usual. Fantastic racing from everybody throughout the field. Kyalami, fantastic track, and there was some fantastic racing, some great close battles. As Chris said there, it's good to hear that he enjoyed the race. He didn't have an easy race, as much as he enjoyed it. He worked hard. He was fighting pretty much for the whole race because he didn't give up when he saw the gap to Haley, and he closed that gap, and they had a good battle. Archie brought it home. He did well. Yeah, just fantastic standard of racing as usual from the Simsport guys, and brought to you by Simply Race, live streamed here. Absolutely awesome job the whole team does, the broadcasting, the guys racing, everything. It's fantastic, and it's an absolute pleasure to be part of it.
Brilliant news, and I'm very pleased to have come in and cover this round 4 of the ACC Season 3. By all means, if Alex ever has to go and do some real-world racing work again, then by all means send me a message. I'll happily jump in because there's been some fantastic racing here at Kyalami, and I'm sure everybody will be looking forward to Monza later on. I think Steve pretty much wrapped everything up there as better than I probably could. So I think I'm going to end. We're going to say goodbye there. Thank you, everybody, for watching, liking, commenting, streaming, giving us support to all your favourite drivers and everything like that. And thank you, and we shall see you next week at Monza.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jack. Before you go, just thank you for jumping in. As I said earlier, really appreciate it, and you've kept the standards as high as Alex normally sets them. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much for having me, and by all means, I'll be tuning in as a spectator next week.
Great stuff. Please drop us a comment when you do.
Will do. See you later, everybody.
Cheers. Bye-bye.